Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here with Stone Payton, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio. And Stone, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be the CloseHer special.
I have really been looking forward to this. We are going to have so much fun. I love this job. It beats the heck out of working, doesn't it?
I know. Meet the most interesting people.
Yeah. All right. First up on this episode, please join me in welcoming to the broadcast co-founder with CloseHer, Miss Kara Brown. How are you?
We're great. Thanks so much for having us today.
Well, Kara, you brought a whole crew with you.
I did. All my girlfriends.
All your girlfriends. And CloseHer, tell us about that group that you started, I believe, with Jordan, right?
Yeah. So I'll let Jordan sort of start the story about the founding of CloseHer, but we've been friends for a while, and I'm thrilled that everyone could be here with me today.
All right. So this is Jordan Arrighetti, and you're part of the team. So tell us about CloseHer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the pleasure of being a sales executive at a well-known startup here in Atlanta, Sales Loft. And it was about a year and a half ago when I looked around and I recognized that I was the only female on the sales floor. And while I love my male colleagues to death, I recognized that there was something that was missing in my day-to-day that didn't allow me to open up and to really kind of learn and feel more empowered as a woman. And, you know, as women, we face different challenges. So I reached out on LinkedIn to my network and said, hey, this is who I am. I have this goal of meeting similar females that look and sound like me, that are interested in having careers while balancing a personal life. And I was overwhelmed with a very generous amount of responses, all of which these women are around me today. And that was what spearheaded the CloseHer brand.
And then that was all around people in sales, women in sales?
That's correct.
And then you found that in your organization, there were a lot of salespeople, but not many that look like you.
Yeah, I mean, sales is, I think, for anyone that has hustle and that believes in what they're selling and they believe they can transfer that belief to somebody else. Typically, what I find from women is that we're very risk adverse. So they tend to maybe hide or not believe that this could be a career that they can pursue, where we know that statistically there's a lot to support that women are actually superior in many ways to our male friends. And the women in this room shared that same vision. And while I work for a SaaS and a B2B company, what I was finding is that there were other industries that felt the same way. And what better opportunity to bring these people together, with these women together, and empower each other.
And then how did Kara get involved? Was she one of the first persons to respond, or how did you guys connect?
I think so. There were a lot of responses to that LinkedIn post. We should print it out and frame it, I think. So I have my own small business, and we are business lead gen consultants, and we come in through the sales team a lot. And I don't get to interact with a lot of sales women. And so Jordan, being also a personal friend and sort of a top shelf human in my perspective, and being new to Atlanta, she was like, hey, I really want to connect with women in sales. And I said, let's do this. And not just let's do this, but I will sponsor this. Let's find really great women leaders and put them in the same room with women who are also interested in meeting other women sales leaders. And let's just watch the magic happen. And that's literally what happened.
And then when did this start?
The silence, yeah.
Was it
December.
It feels like forever.
Yeah. Well, it was December of 2017 to 18.
That's right.
Yeah. So we've been at it a little while now. We've had, I think, 6 events total. One in New York, thanks to Leah, who's here too. And so it was really a super organic process. We don't have goals to charge anyone for anything or to get anything from like a revenue perspective back. We really truly want to give back to the women in our community and help them grow. It's not just the 4 of us. We've had incredible speakers come and share their stories, their perspective on women in sales. We've had a panel on how to get hired, how to negotiate. We had a whole panel on comp and how to negotiate better comp. And that's so important for women to be able to be in a room with only women and ask questions about how to negotiate without a man being I mean, for lack of a better word, over her shoulder, right? Rolling his eyes, or that's a silly question. We all know that as women, we are stronger and we ask better questions when we're surrounded with other women. And so we just sort of put that to practice, and it's been absolutely tremendous.
Now, when you started having this conversation, so you were the impetus in terms of, hey, I have this idea, right? And then it became you two, at least at first, and there was probably other people that kind of inquired. Did you guys like go to coffee or talk and say, okay, what's your vision of this? Like, at some point it was like an idea, hey, let me throw this out there.
Yeah, great question. So basically it started on LinkedIn, and then what happened was Leah and Annie specifically that are here today stepped up and said, well, I have space. And Leah says, well, I know people. And then it really was just a couple of lunches that we had and exchanging emails. You know, we all have full-time jobs. We're doing this on the side in good faith and knowing that this is the right thing to do in our community. So we don't have a ton of time to meet outside the office. This is actually one of the rare opportunities that we have to be all together, which is funny. But we're corresponding almost on a daily basis about, hey, I met this great woman, or I have this idea, or can we do this event? And we're very efficient with our time. And it was really one or two lunches before we got off the ground.
And then so you the idea became more real, right? It was less of a, hey, we could do lots of things. And then you start doing some of these things that you wanted to do. And then what was that first event that you said, okay, let's do this, and it's going to happen on this day, and it'll look like this?
Annie should jump in here.
Right.
So we were like, we want to put an event on. Where can we have it? And Annie was like, I have space.
So Annie Lewis, I work at a commercial real estate firm here in Atlanta, Cushman & Wakefield, and being in brokerage, one of the only females, as Jordan says, on the floor. You look around, and it's a very male-dominant traditional industry, and a lot of people looked at me like I was crazy coming out of college, going straight into this industry as a broker. And so I saw Kara, who I'd met through another co-working or women's event, and saw her post on Jordan's wall, and I said, oh, I got the space. We had just moved to Midtown from 55 Ivan Allen downtown, and had our goal with our space was to be able to have a room of 250 people. We're a 2-floor space here in Midtown, and our goal was to have everybody together when we do our all-team meetings. And so I immediately was like, I got it, let's go. And that kind of was the start of the first event.
It was amazing. So I said, hey, I've got a great speaker. Katie Ivey, who at the time was the director of marketing for Marketo, is also a personal friend. And I was like, Katie, you want to come talk? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And I remember being at that first breakfast. This was the first a few events for breakfast. And Jordan and I well, our friends will show up. Remember that? We were like...
So there was like this, I don't know who's going to come.
Yeah. And we were like, and we didn't charge anything. And so I was like, oh, we'll see our friends from work. And
right.
I invited a few people I knew, and we just, a couple of clients of mine, see who would show up. I think we had 60 women. Yep. And I remember Annie turned to me at the breakfast, and she goes, do you know that woman? And I said, no. Do you know that woman? And she was like, no. I was like, none of us know that woman. There's a stranger here. This is amazing. And it was really cool. I think the last event we had was at ATV, and David Lightburn was so kind to let us use his space for free. They're just absolutely terrific partners. And we asked the room, how many of you is this your first CloseHer event? And we had 65 women in the room, and I would say 75 to 80% were brand new.
Yep.
So since the events we've been having in the last 18 months or so, we have a list of close to 225 women who have raised their hand and said, I'm interested in coming to an event. Maybe they haven't come to every single one, but just that we have definitely tapped into this need in the marketplace for women to connect, specifically women in sales.
And I would say kind of the goal, it wasn't to have that person come every single time. We wanted to change the subject and have them really come to the subject matter discussion that meant the most to them. And so I think that was really clear when we got to the fourth or fifth event, that people were really honing into what was really inspirational to them and going to those types of events. And so we're trying to change each event to cater to different women.
Now, Leah, how did you get engaged?
Yeah, that's a great question. I went to the first event, so Yeah, I was a stranger.
So you were a stranger to them?
I was.
Maybe you
I
were the one that we were like, who is this woman?
It
We
was
like
Leah.
her.
It was me. I had gone to the first event, and we had gone back and forth on LinkedIn a few times, and then I had gotten an invite to the second event. And I own a sales recruiting business here in Atlanta. We focus on tech companies, tech startups. And the second event theme was how to negotiate your compensation. And I just said, I have to be at this event. I have to be a part of this event because as someone who negotiates compensation constantly, I constantly don't see women ever countering. And it's just something for me where we put out 5 to 7 offers a month, and it's not a myth. Women never counter. It is, they just kind of take what they're given.
They say thank you. And
thank you. Sure.
When do I start?
Let's do this. Whereas men, I'll have a conversation, and again, I'll say, well, our budget is 80. Well, that's just their first offer. And it's very innate. And I really wanted to be a part of that event. And it just kind of sang to me. And as we had run events and we'd promoted for the compensation event, multiple clients reached out to me. JustWorks is a PEO software company out of New York, and they're really making a run here for Atlanta. And they were dying to get involved. Please let us help you with this. We are so ready to have more women in sales roles. We really want to be a part of this. So they had reached out to me and offered to host us in New York if we ran the same event, in New York. So that's essentially how I kind of came involved. And on LinkedIn, a lot of clients reach out to me and want to get involved. So that's kind of where my place was in it, as someone who's talking to people daily that are building sales teams in Atlanta and New York City. There has to be more substance to we just want women because we want them there. They're actively saying we want to make women in sales part of our future. So that's kind of where I came in. And be successful.
And not get frustrated and quit, right?
That's the biggest thing. As someone who, I talk to people that are upset a lot. You know, they call me, they want to look for a new job. And when I ask them the question, they feel like they maybe had a bad day. And sometimes when they're women, they have no one to go to. No one in the room looks like them, and they quit. And that's not a good reason to leave this industry. You're good at this. You had a bad day. Sometimes you just need someone that is kind of like you to just put you right back in your chair and tell you to pick up the phone again.
So now, are the initial women that participated were women in sales, right? Mm-hmm. Is part of the mission to kind of show women the path that sales could be an opportunity that maybe you're not considering because you've already self-selected out because you have a stigma of salespeople in a negative way, or the pushy salesperson stereotype?
I don't know that we're on a mission to get more women in sales. I know we all sort of have our own goal for CloseHer from our different perspectives. We were talking about this as a group earlier. I'm an entrepreneur. Less than 2% of female entrepreneurs will break $1 million in revenue. And so as someone who's accomplished that goal, I want to empower other entrepreneurs to think of themselves as salespeople, because if you don't think of yourself as a salesperson, breaking that $1 million goal is really hard. And Jordan comes from a very specific perspective from the SaaS space, where less than 21% of senior leaders, CRO and CXOs in that space are women. And so we've had a lot of conversations around how do we help women that have made this decision, that are maybe in an SDR or a BDR role, to put up their hand and say, I'm ready for the next level, right? So that we can close the gap of that 21%, so that there isn't another woman who has to post on LinkedIn and say, I need women to talk to about sort of the challenges I'm facing because no one on the floor looks like me.
Good.
And inevitably, we're going to attract people that are maybe residing in different divisions that never thought that sales was a potentially good avenue for them. And to further Kara's point, I'm a new mom. I have a 6-month-old at home. So one of the things that I love most about this group and our mission is that we're evolving as we evolve as humans. I haven't needed women as much as I need them now because I'm faced with a different sort of circumstances of juggling a life of a new mom and a career where things can be demanding. So, there's often times where, again, you're looking for that empathy. You're looking for, okay, I had a bad day. How do I pick myself back up? Because it is hard, and women do tend to shy away from their careers, especially after babies. And that's one of the things I love about this group is we have a pulse on what our constituents are looking for based off of what we see and feel in our day-to-day roles.
And then you're doing these events, is it on a set rhythm, or is this kind of like, hey, what does your fall look like? Like, how far in advance are you?
Hey, Annie, when's the space available? So we have a quarterly event for sure, and those are planned out. I'm really proud of us, actually. We planned the entire 2019 in January, February, so that was great. So we have at least quarterly events. This quarter, we're actually having 2 events. So in April 17th, thank you, Leah.
Next week.
I'll actually let you talk about it because it's really your baby. And I think one of the great things about CloseHer is we have a quarterly event, but if one of us has another idea or there's a woman coming to town we want to talk to, we just do it. Or we want to go to New York.
We go to New York.
Well,
so on the 17th of April, a potential client of mine at Samsura had said something to me about this incredible event that they had out in San Francisco. And they've just moved a lot of their sales capacity to Atlanta. And what the event was, they had 4 to 5 women sitting on kind of like a panel. And what they did was they invited 45 other women to the space, and each woman got 1.5 minutes with each woman to pick their brain about career development. How did you know you wanted to move into management? What specifically did you have to do to get to that management role? What are you looking for in your next hire? Because I've done research about your organization and it's really great to meet you. So things like that. And so that's essentially what we're doing is speed dating for your career. Swipe left. I don't know if Bumble has trademarked that yet. I don't really know. But that is essentially what we've set up for the 17th. And so it's going to go from 6 to 8, And Flock Safety is another technology startup here that's moved to Atlanta that has so graciously offered to host us. So, that is next week on the 17th, and all of the details are on the CloseHer website.
And that was kind of an impromptu, that opportunity came up, and you said, let's fit it in. It makes sense.
Same thing with New York was the same way. A client of mine that is in New York was like, if you guys ever want to do this in New York, please let us do whatever we can to help. And JustWorks kind of came in and said, absolutely, let's help for sure.
And I think what's also super cool is, we get these ideas and it's like, okay, who can we get on the panel? And everyone puts their brain together and picks different women within different industries to make sure it's not all, one kind of industry. So
it's really cool. We when we talked about 2019, we thought through, if we're going to have 4 events, what are the 4 sort of industry verticals or women in leadership that we want to sort of attach to that? So in the first quarter, we did SaaS and big enterprise SaaS. So we had Allie Gooch, who is a director of SDRs from Salesforce, come and talk to us. She did a phenomenal job. And so that was sort of our enterprise SaaS-based company. The next one will likely be more around the mid-cap or scaling startup. So Jordan has a great sort of story about being one of the very first folks at Sales Loft, and now they're doing really well. How do you manage that? How do you grow within a scaling startup and not get hired over? Because that happens all the time, right? How do you put your hand up for management when there's a giant VC round and there's folks flying in from San Francisco to take that job, right? And so the rest of 2019 is really focused on each of these different types of sales opportunities. I think there's also an SMB play in there. And then obviously my love is entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurs thinking of themselves as salespeople and changing that mindset. So I think we've done a pretty good job of 2019 in having something for everyone. And then like Leah said, if it comes up and we want to do it, give it to one of us. Hand it to a busy woman, it'll get done, right?
Now, so technology is a theme for CloseHer because a lot of you are technology
Actually,
adjacent?
we're not. It's one of the few places where it's not necessarily a theme.
Just me.
Yeah, just Jordan, really. So Annie comes from what we sort of consider a traditional sales environment, right? She's in real estate. That we think about finance or any of the sort of traditional sales roles. I'm an entrepreneur, so I sort of think of myself, actually, most of my book of business is in freight and supply chain, so very sexy. And so I spend a lot of time with these like sort of more traditional salespeople, less technology. And then Leah is really focused on finding really great candidates. And just to plug her, A, she's awesome. B, she doesn't only hire women, she also places men.
I do.
But she has, I think, what all of us have is a real deep sense of committing to empowering women. And committing to empowering women, whether you want to get into real estate and finding someone in the network that can help you with that goal, or looking at the top rep at Sales Loft and seeing it's a woman, like that's incredible. And just being there and being present to make those connections.
Now, in your world in supply chain, are you touching that as well in terms of manufacturing, supply chain, logistics? Are you getting, because those tend to be male-dominated industries as well?
Yeah, so just because of the nature of who I am and my backstory, I just happen to be in a lot of really male-dominated industries. Although, if you're not in healthcare, beauty, or education,
then you're in a male-dominated
industry. So, and I was just listening to a story on a podcast about the CMO of Victoria's Secret, who was a man for a long time. So basically, everything's male-dominated. And so, yeah, I think it's just a place for women to come together, knowing that no matter what you do, entertainment, healthcare, education, you're always going to have to sort of fight the good fight. And I also think, this is just my personal opinion, that it's a lot about confidence. So I just hired my first dude. He's going to be great. I'm super excited about him. But we interviewed 25 women, and I really would have liked to have hired a woman for the role. And the biggest issue I found in interviewing these women was confidence. And so with CloseHer, if we can connect a young woman with a Jordan who sees herself as someone who really wants to get in there and dig in and fight the good fight and have the hustle, and she just needs someone, like Leah said, to pick her up on her rough day, we've done our job, right? Finding someone to give you that confidence or give you that boost is so important, because I mean, I'm really happy I hired a guy. I am. But that we interviewed those 25 women, and the biggest sort of takeaway for me was confidence. So how can I help empower women in my community to have more confidence in any way we can?
Now, in the group so far, has anybody kind of approached you, having gone through this and interacted and connected and collaborated with you, that say, you know what, this has made a difference. This has kind of given me more confidence, or this has given me some tools or connections that help further my career. Have you gotten any of that?
Specifically, I was working with someone who, or I met someone at a CloseHer event, and she was going back and forth with a client, and it goes back to confidence regarding a contract. And she talked herself out of it almost. And I was going back and forth with her multiple times, just saying, just email the contract. Don't overthink it. Confidence here. Send the contract and then have a conversation. And because she just kind of didn't, women, again, we're very risk adverse. Again, I think that's a really great way to put it. We kind of fear that risk, and we're always, well, what if I fail? Okay, so failure is not someone negotiating a contract with you, just so we're clear. And as a woman, you need to stand next to your contract and say, no, this is what I charge. She sent the contract, they signed the contract, and there was no drama. And she didn't.
She created drama in her own.
She worked
she was
herself right up
drama.
to it. Yeah, right. And it was just such a, I don't want to call it an easy fix, because I've been there and I've had to fail a multitude of times before I got it right. But I had to say to her, what is the worst that's going to happen? They say no, then we have that conversation. But you've already played out the scenario in your head, just send it. And she sent me an email after, and she said, I cannot even thank you. I said, I just told you to send an email. I was like, but okay, sure.
But she found you at CloseHer. She came to a CloseHer event and saw Leah as a leader, and someone who, what I love about Leah is she is like, I think I'm direct. I think you've got it. I
have to be really careful on radio.
Super direct. Like, do this, right? And get this done. And I think that's exactly what some women need. It's just a little kick in the what.
It's so true. We sometimes we talk ourselves out of things, and I've done it. It's the only reason why I can help other women not do it is because I did it for so long. And I think that's something that I really wanted to bring to this group is saying, I've failed so many times. Please let me help you not fail this way.
Yep. And in addition to that, it's not just, that's a good example of almost becoming a mentor to people, where it's very organic. You see someone, you like their style, you like how they present themselves. But it's really about mentoring moments. And that's what these events are. They're just moments. They're events. They're a very specific amount of time for you to learn and grasp onto that knowledge very quickly. And the best women and the best people, like anybody, they'll take that and then they'll build on that right away. And that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to give people that opportunity to learn very quickly and apply that into their day-to-day lives.
And the events are a place where those collisions can occur because everybody around them is people like them that are open to sharing and wanting to help. And so it's a very safe environment to kind of be vulnerable and ask for help.
Yeah, I think there was a really interesting moment at the last event where our speaker got really vulnerable. Someone asked her a question and she, I don't remember the exact conversation, but she got really vulnerable about having failed the leader, about having been disappointed in her career trajectory. And I remember saying to her, like, thank you for being that vulnerable in front of this room. Because I feel like I definitely do this. I put on like a really strong front, right? You have to. You're a woman in business. Like sometimes you just got to like put on your game face, grow your pair of balls and get out there, right? And I think it was really cool to see her be vulnerable in front of a room of women and have those women be gracious in accepting her vulnerability and giving her back appreciation for having done that. And so I think that's a special thing that may or may not happen in a mixed gender sort of room, but feels, like you said, very safe in a room of all women.
So now what do you need more of? How can we help?
More women. So I think our biggest ask for anyone listening would be send us your amazing women leaders. Send us women in sales that are leaders. We're always looking. There is only 21% of them that reach that CRO, CXO level. So we sort of run around Atlanta looking for these women and having meetings with their assistants because they can't meet us in person and planning things out months in advance to fit in their calendars. And we will make it work for these senior women. But much like entrepreneurs that break that $10 million mark, right? There's a rounding error. There's only 21% in the country. So the number of those women in the Southeast that we can get our hands on is probably really small. Right. And I think we're building the list right now.
And also send us your ideas.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we haven't hit on a topic or a theme that's meaningful to them. And maybe that's why maybe they know of us and they haven't shown up because we're not talking to them in the way that that resonates with them. So we're also open to all ideas that are going to be more inclusive to different industries, different age ranges, so that, again, we can create that trust and that forum.
And it's not just B2B, it's any sales role, right?
Any sales role. Actually, I read a really interesting, there's a sort of a Google group of folks that are in sales. And there was a man that posted to this Google group that said, we have been hiring and we only have male SDRs and we need some women. And so I emailed him and I said, I got a list, right? I have a list of women. He's not in Atlanta, but I said, find the women in your community, right? Or we can help you, or how can I help you find the women? So there are these male champions, right? That 100% understand that they need to put women in sales on their teams. We're relatively hard to find, right? There aren't a lot. And so if we can also help those sales leaders out there connect with women that they want to help nurture and engage, we're down for that too.
Yeah, I think that what you're doing is amazing and it serves the community fantastically. I think that we as a community have to do a better job of helping women see the value and the worth of being in sales and not self-select out at a young age and put this negative stigma on sales because, without sales, nobody eats, right? That's the heart of every business. And to self-select out before you even begin is just a missed opportunity.
Can I just touch on that? The other thing to piggyback on that as well is we also really want to make sure that women, when they're leaving our events, are becoming champions for other women. So I think the stigma for decades, if not centuries, has been if a woman gets in power, that is such a limited amount of space. She doesn't want to take another woman with her because it was competition for a long time. And so a lot of the things that I've spoken to and about, because I do speak to a lot of women, is if you are in a position of power, please, by no means just hire people because they are women, but please look around you and see what other women you can take with you that are qualified. Obviously, we're not just saying put women in spaces because they're women, but it's unfortunate. And it's really been something even in the last year and a half to watch being a part of CloseHer. It's really fun to watch that narrative shift. And we have to continue to make sure that we not only bring women into sales, obviously, but when they're there, who else can they bring with them is a huge thing to take from that as well.
Like begets like.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, at the CloseHer website, it has the events and things like that. You're also, I would imagine, looking for speakers as well. You're always looking for the higher level women that have kind of made it as well to be speakers at the events.
Speakers and sponsors.
Speakers and sponsors.
Speakers and sponsors.
And to come. I think we're charging $10 an event now, which is just to cover your coffee and bagel, to be honest. We haven't done a lot of sponsorship, reaching out for sponsors yet. I think it's probably on the radar for maybe 2020. But the grassroots reaction to all of this has been sort of self-sustaining. So we haven't had to do a lot of sponsorship sort of, banging down the door. I think later in 2020, if we decide that we're going to do more than just the 4 events a year or expand to some sort of content, it's a much longer term strategy. But, sponsors are always great. And I think one of the cool things to see is that the sponsors that we do have are all committed to hiring and empowering women, which is really great. So I would love it to one day be, if you're a sponsor of CloseHer, you're a female-friendly spot. That'd be great, right? We're a place that wants to have women come work here and empower women. So we're going to put our logo on this. That's pretty cool to me.
Cool. So once again, if people wanted to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can go to CloseHer.com. I was super excited that was available when we bought it last year. It's just Close and then Her, which I'll give Jordan all the credit on the name. CloseHer.com, and you can reach out to any of us or fill out the little info form, and we'll reach out back.
Well, Kara, thank you so much for organizing this, and thank you, Jordan, Annie, and Leah, for being part of it today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for empowering women.
There you go. Hey, maybe we'll make this every quarter.
I
when
love
you have
it.
an event, we'll come and spotlight your event.
That sounds great.
All right, this is Lee Cantor for Stone Payne. We will see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio.